questions, don't put up your hands. Go to the sides.
Chris, someone asked me a question at the break. While we're waiting for others to come down to ask questions, one of the questions at the break was, I wrote it down, how does someone walk a process through the stages of discipleship? I mean, how do you end up moving them? We didn't really get to that in my presentation, but I had a few reflections on that. In our and what I'm talking about is how do you move someone from they have explored the truth, maybe they've even embraced the truth of the faith, but they're stuck. You can't get them to where they're experiencing it frequently, or they're even able to teach others. They're sort of stuck in this particular stage of discipleship, and they're not really growing. How do you get them to move? So there were several things that we identified in our journey on how people grow. And it relates to what Jesus said in John 12:33. You remember when he said, walk in the light while you can so the darkness will not overtake you? What do you have to do for darkness to overtake you? What do you have to do to get stuck? What do you have to do for darkness to overtake you? What do you think? Just stop walking, right? I guarantee you, if you set out in the parking lot out here around 5:30, darkness is going to overtake you. So you got to keep walking in the light. And in our journey and looking at discipleship, we identified 3 sources of light. You remember in John 8:12, Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. So one of the encounters to help people grow is having fresh encounters with Jesus. And for many believers, their first encounter with Christ has been their last. Okay? They don't continue to have these fresh encounters with Jesus that begin to move the needle. So if I have a struggle with forgiveness, for instance, I may need to have a fresh encounter with Jesus at the cross, where he said to the Roman soldiers, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I may need a fresh encounter of that Jesus so that I have a little bit of forgiveness to share with you, because it's a divine commodity. It's like Anton said, I can't give you something I don't have, so I have to have this fresh encounter with Jesus. I have to fresh experience and turn aside and experience a little more of that divine commodity of forgiveness, so I have it to impart. Another source of light, you remember the Bible says in Psalm 119, 105, in fact, downstairs there's a artwork, thy word is a lamp unto my feet, a light unto my path. So we have to have these fresh experiences of the word. This is do the book. So if I'm lacking in something, I may need to experience a verse. We oftentimes say that if I experience God at the point of his word, something changes. And it's not God, and it's not his word. It's my heart. It's the human heart. So I may need to find a Bible verse that I need to experience to move me along in that area of growth. I'm stuck. Because that's where most discipleship gets stuck, is actually between stage 2 and stage 3. When I've embraced the truth as important, but I'm not experiencing it Monday through Friday. And so whatever that is, whatever truth I'm stuck on, I've got to find a verse that I need to start living, experiencing. And then the third source of light for us to grow that we have is fellowship. So engaging these frequent encounters of fellowship. That's what Anton just made reference to. We've got to have these times where we experience fellowship. Quick story. I was in Dallas, Texas, and we had gathered as a group of believers with the Pentecostals and Charismatics of North America to pray for the persecution around the world. we just met together. We start praying together, and stories were shared about recent persecutions among Arab Christians. I don't know if you saw some of these things on YouTube where Christians were beheaded. And I see this, and I start getting angry. Have you ever gotten angry about injustice? And I'm angry. And so I'm praying, God, just help those who are victims of persecution. And, I'm almost praying a sick'em prayer. God, get those bad ISIS people. And I'm not praying that out loud. I'm praying that to myself. But in a few minutes, George Wells, he's one of the cabinet members from Canada, steps up. And he starts praying for ISIS. And he starts praying that God would raise up out of ISIS Sauls who become Pauls. That just like God met Saul on the road to Damascus, that God would meet these ISIS leaders and convert them to followers of Jesus. Now, is that a prayer of faith or what? And the light in him exposed the darkness inside of me. I'm angry. And he's praying, God, save ISIS. You see how that works? As we fellowship together, the light in you exposes the darkness inside of me. So we have these three sources of light. Fresh encounters with Jesus, frequent engaging of fellowship, and faithful experiences of His Word to help us move the needle and grow. That was related to one of the questions that was asked.
Well, that was a question and an answer. So the next one will be, we got one person there? Oh, no.
Thank you. I'm from here in South Africa, Rustenburg in the northwest. My name is Untihetse Tlomelang, or I can just simplify it and say you call me OJ, like the others. I've got one question for Dr. Alexandra and one question for Pastor Myburgh. The first question is, why don't we stop to call ourselves Christians and rather call ourselves disciples? Because the word Christian in the Bible appears only 3 times, and the word disciple appears 474. And the second question to Pastor Myburgh, you started well about the pastor as a player and changing from a player to become a coach. But why don't we say, according to your last illustration now, why don't we say a pastor should become a player coach? Thank you.
I like you, OG. It's oftentimes good to say, why do we keep doing that? Why do we keep doing whatever it is we're doing? And so, I appreciate the why question. Why do we call ourselves Christians rather than Christ followers or followers of Jesus? Depending on where I travel in the world, I'm much more comfortable using the word I'm a Christ follower, or I follow the teachings of Jesus, and I have a relationship. I speak in terms of relationship with Jesus. To your point, there's a lot of in some places there's a lot of baggage associated with that term, Christian. So I have, depending on my audience that I'm around, I will oftentimes use that terminology of followers of Jesus. But I just appreciate you exploring why do we keep doing that.
Thanks. I want to get to that second question. That's why do we call the coach a player coach? And of course, anyone in a fivefold ministry is not going to stop doing ministry. You're still going to be preaching, teaching, doing things. We're not going to stop. So yes, we are player coaches, but I was deliberate in my example because I want us to make a shift, a total mindset shift from one person doing everything to everybody doing everything. And another example I often use tied to this one is I would find somebody in the audience that's the biggest guy in the audience, and I'll pick the smallest guy in the audience, and I'll ask the church, listen, if you need a bodyguard, which one of the two would you employ? And they always pick the biggest guy. And I say to them, okay, well, what if I tell you that the smallest guy has hired everybody in this room as part of his staff, as a security company, and he has 100 people in a security company? Would you hire this one big guy, or would you hire the company with 100? And obviously the answer is always, we want a security company with 100. Do you want a one-man army? Do you want a 100-man army? And for me, it's the emphasis of shifting from the 1 to the 100. So yes, the pastor is always going to be part of that army. He's going to be part of that security company. He's going to be part of that team as well. He's not going to stop doing things, but we need to impart to everyone, and everyone needs to be on the field. Thanks.
I like the fact that Anton said the pastor's the coach, and he's not the coach from sitting at the stadium. He's right down there. He's on the field, always there for emergency, but the players is there with him. The next question on this end now.
Hello, my name is Caroline. I'm from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm involved in a parachurch organization, so we work with pastors all the time. And maybe I can piggyback on the whys that the gentleman had, and I want to relate to the coach-player scenario. It seems to me that the Ephesians 4 model is in contradiction with the Matthew 28:19 model. And the reason why I'm saying this is because of the training of our people. So in the area that I work, the pastor does not evangelize and he does not disciple. And even if there is some form of personal discipleship or evangelism, there's no form of accountability. So maybe, I don't know if you can comment on that or if you can give an answer, whichever.
Okay, who's ready for that one?
I think sorry, before you go, I think if you could sort of just rephrase your question just in sort of one sentence, the key thing that you want me to answer.
So, should a pastor personally evangelize and disciple, smaller context, in terms of accountability? What do they do? Who keeps a pastor accountable in terms of discipleship and evangelism, both?
Okay, thank you. Right, when I'm talking about accountability, I'm not necessarily talking about policing. I'm talking about a journey in a road that we walk with one another where we say, listen, how's it going with your marriage? How's it going in your work? How's it going with your spiritual growth, etc.? So, yes, as a pastor, we also need to be accountable. I'm accountable. There's people that I share with. There's people that I pray with. Pastor Chris is one of the people that, I would love to listen to. But we're all going to have different giftings. But regardless of our giftings, we all need to lead people to Christ. And I think I don't want to put pastors on the spotlight here today. But in essence, we've got to demonstrate. That's what I was saying by the example of Jesus. He demonstrated, he led the way, he showed it. In other words, whatever he taught, he did himself. We've got to practice what we preach. We've got to do what we say and show the way and lead the way. And so that means we need to evangelize. We need to disciple. We need to do that and set the example for others to follow. And I often find in churches that there's a frustration because just members would say, but we need this, and the pastor doesn't do that, and the pastor doesn't do this, and the church lacks in these areas. But I want to challenge you and say to you, or let me rather give you this testimony to say, the night I became born again, that very same night, I was walking the streets of Johannesburg until 3 o'clock at night as a 16-year-old young man. I spoke to the Lord about many things, but one of the things I said to him, I said, Lord, whatever is missing in your church, whatever is not being done, I will do it. If nobody's praying, I will pray. If nobody's packing the chairs, I will pack the chairs. I will do whatever, whenever, wherever for Jesus. www. Not World Wide Web, not World Wide Wrestling. Whatever, whenever, wherever for Jesus. And I adopted that motto at the age of 16. And therefore, there's no task too big or too small for me to do. And that is the challenge I want to throw right back at you and say, and to every other church member that feels any kind of a frustration, if you see the lack, fill it. Amen.
Yeah, and Caroline, thank you for that question. It's a really good one, and I appreciate you being a steward of the Word to really study it and compare it and look at it. And the only thing I'd say with Anton, as a pastor, one of the really neat opportunities we have is that platform on Sunday morning or whenever you stand to preach. Colossians 3:16 says, allow the word of Christ to dwell deeply, richly within you. And one of the ways to embody what Anton is saying there is to, before you tell someone else what to do, you're vulnerable about how you've done it. The person you led to Christ this past week, or someone you shared your faith with, how you practiced James 5:16 with your spouse when you blew it, and how you confessed your wrongdoing. Through our vulnerability, we can use our platform to disciple, the platform of preaching. So just by even allowing the word of Christ to dig deeply within us, to lead us to be vulnerable about what the Spirit's doing in our heart, is a form of, I think, of that mentoring and discipleship. But I think it's a great question, and I think the pastor is responsible in a lot of ways to lead through example, and you shared that.
Lovely. We're going back to the right side.
Thank you. My name is Pastor Caesar Magwenchu from AFM in Zimbabwe. My question is, I'm also working with an organization called Africa Strategic Discipleship Movement. You gave us a powerful start off when you spoke of Matthew 19 and Matthew 4:19 and Matthew 28, the coming and then the going. Then you said the 3 years are for discipleship. Now, but when I heard you well, maybe I did not hear you well. It appears the emphasis there is discipleship for new converts. Is it not like a misconception or misnomer? Because we are now taking an assumption that even us being pastors, we have been discipled. How then do you go about it for us pastors to be engaged first into discipleship before discipling others? Because we can't give what you don't have.
Yeah, I think, to be clear, the example there says, you were fish, you become fishermen. In other words, Jesus said, I am the fisherman. And when he says, you are going to become fishermen, he's indirectly saying, you're going to become like me. And we need to become Christ-like. And so being Christ-like means not only evangelism. It doesn't mean that the only thing that he was focusing on there was leading people to Christ and evangelism. Because there's character. There's a whole lot of other things that makes Jesus who he is as part of being the fisher of men. Because when Jesus catches the fish, he knows what to do with them. He can heal them. There's many different things that Jesus does. He spoke about in Luke 4:18, he said, I've come to fulfill the prophecy of over my life. Luke 4:18, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bring good news to the poor, healing to the brokenhearted, opening up blind eyes. So he said, I've not come only to bring good news of salvation. I've come to heal people's broken hearts. I've come to see physical healing. I've come to see deliverance. I've come to see injustice set aside. I've come to bring the year of Jubilee. He's come to bring a lot of things. So ultimately, we want to be like Christ. And it's Christ's likeness that will lead us to be fishers of men. And that there's a cycle, a repetitive cycle. And in that cycle, there's a journey that you walk from start to finish. But it doesn't mean you have to be at the finish end before you can do something. That's why I used the example of starting with what you have And along the journey, you will learn many things. And whatever you learn, you can immediately start to share. Whatever you've experienced, you can immediately start to share with someone else as well. I don't know, Lewis, if you wanted to add to that.
Pastor Caesar, thank you for your commitment to discipleship and your passion for that. I hope you're going to be on the focus groups. The only thing I would add is, we and you made reference to it, I think, we never stop growing. We've got to keep, and Daniel said it last night from the pulpit, we've always got to be open to being discipled while we're discipling. A mentor needs to have a mentor. And so just like I needed to be open to my daughter teaching me about her strategy for listening to and hearing God, and just keep being open to my growth. So we don't ever stop growing as a disciple. But appreciate your commitment to that process.
If I can add, the teacher never stops learning. And none of us can come to a place where you can say, now I am like Jesus. We are all on a journey. But it's sort of, if I can illustrate it, it's like children crossing a river. One is in front, one is behind, and you're holding hands. I don't know if you've ever seen elephants cross a river. It's like trunk to tail, trunk to tail, trunk to tail. And somebody's leading you, but somebody's also holding on to your tail. And we need to be like elephants crossing a river, following someone else, and yet leading others behind.
Good example. This side now.
Thank you. I'm Archibald Malungwane from Pretoria, South Africa. I think from Myburgh, my request will be, I wonder if you have anything on hard copy as a book that you sell. Because what you taught there, it's very important. There's so much happening on the ground here, so many books that are there. And the mistake that takes us out of discipling people, it is because most pastors today might be Pentecostal or charismatics. We want to do everything, and other people become just servants and not disciples. They just run after us. And they are kept at the distance. They can't come close. We don't impart. So the church is full of what you call converts more than disciples, to disciple others. So churches are full of people, but outside there's no life. So I would request myself, Pastor Myburgh, if you have anything on hard copy, we could even buy it and start to practice to make disciples in churches so that we may transform the world outside there.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Just to answer the question, what we will do is we'll make available our notes and our PowerPoints and so forth. And as Lewis said, they're going to make available the tools that they have. In terms of myself, I haven't written a book on this topic, so I don't have a hard copy book that I can give you. But I'm going to give you my notes for this session, and I'll email that to all of you who have completed your email addresses, if that'll be a starting point. And then we'll continue the conversation in the focus groups. I think that's going to be the platform. And I think it's important that we understand that today is a launching pad for that focus group conversations, and we're going to try and form a steering committee that will get people together and get the conversations going. And we'll probably invite you again together, in the area where you are, and try and get, if you're in Kenya or you are in Burkina Faso or in Ghana, you could get a group together and we can start discussing and helping one another. We can talk about the resources, tools. But we need to use today as a platform to say, let's connect with one another and keep the discussion going, helping one another. Lewis, you had an answer.
Yeah. Yes, these resources are available to be downloaded, copied, free to use as you wish. If you're interested, your question seemed to be trying to get people out the door into their community, and that's where these 10 missional outcomes would be a good focus if you're really trying to employ and empower the laity and loose them, to help these 10 missional outcomes of loving his mission or living his mission are meant to help with that. They're meant to help with freedom, adequacy, and motivation. Freedom from fear, to have courage to go out and share my Jesus story. What was my Jesus story? And it teaches people adequacy, like learning to listen to their story, sharing your story, and segueing into the Jesus story as a strategy. So you learn some of these Jesus stories, like learning the prodigal. So you're listening for prodigals. You got any prodigals in your community? So you'll want to teach your people to have their own prodigal story. You got anybody in your church that has a prodigal story where they were far away and they came home and Jesus welcomed them? Got any of that? So that outcome is teaching how to listen for someone's prodigal story, share your own prodigal story, and then segue to the Jesus that he's waiting. And he's running towards you with a robe in his hand, a robe for your back, a ring for your finger, sandals for your feet, and he wants to throw you a party. That's the kind of Jesus you got.
Hallelujah. The lady here, I think we got this 2 more. Make it as short as possible.
Thank you. My name is Butipa Greta Mogets. I come from the Northwest South Africa. I'm pastoring AFMD Pororo Floodgates. My question is prompted by what I heard and which encouraged me, that discipleship should be a focused area in an attempt that's deliberate by a leader. So now I want to ask, what approach could a pastor or a leader take towards, if you are taking over, where discipleship was not actually a focus area, there was no strategic plan for it. So the members in the church, they are mixed. Others are just coming in as you come in. Others are old, and the old ones are already in leadership undiscipled, not much discipled, or generally discipled. And then the leadership prefers the pastor doing everything, meaning it is a bit of a challenge to develop them to become disciples who can disciple, and therefore church growth becomes a challenge.
Okay, who's the brave one?
I want to start off on that one. I think one of the ways to break passivity in the church is to start with, you run with the runners. You run with those who want to run. That's where you start, no matter how old they are. They can be 12. They can be 80 years old. We've seen people 80 years old in Bible school on fire for Jesus, and I've seen people at 13, 14. You need to run with the runners, and the fire will catch on. You're not necessarily going to get the whole church activated at once, but you run with the runners, and that's where you start, with whoever is available. And also, I want to emphasize again, there needs to be a deliberate attempt from the pastor, but not only the pastor. The responsibility to make disciples and to bring change is everyone's responsibility. You can be the youth pastor, you can be in church for 1 year, it doesn't matter. You can multiply yourself because what you have received. So you are not accountable for the pastor's duplication. You are accountable for your own duplication. I must give what I've got. I can't say, well, I'm not doing it because he's not doing it. I'm not doing it because the church and this elder and that elder is not doing it, so therefore I'm not going to. There's no excuse. Everyone needs to run with what they've got. And then you'll see how it picks up.
Yeah, to that point, and just going with that, running with the runners, tell the runner's story. Tell the story. You're going to celebrate what you value and value what you celebrate. Start making that a culture, part of your culture. Is we're going to run with the runners. We're going to tell the story of who's been running. We're going to make that a part of the what we value at this church. And then, like you said, it'll catch hold.
Yeah, if I can give an example, we were having a Bible school at one of our congregations, quite a number of people attending, and then I decided to get about 25 of the Bible school students into a personalized preaching and teaching course on Sundays, where I would teach them for over 10 weeks how to preach and teach, and I would literally walk a road with them, give them assignments, mark it, and crit them, and they would demonstrate it in class, and I would really walk a 10-week journey with them, and out of that 25, there's at least 15 that are preaching and teaching regularly on a weekly basis, and about 5 that's in the ministry today with normal church members, and that's the point. Every person is a minister.
Wonderful. Okay, another one on the right.
Thank you. My name is Pastor Mawande from AFM of South Africa. I'm also part of African Strategic Discipleship Movement. I just want to ask 2 questions. Question number 1 is that I'm taking it from Pastor. He said, in Africa, we are good at evangelizing to bring souls to the church. But our challenge is discipleship. So I just want to ask a question. Are there any areas in which we need help as Pentecostal church or Africans in order to fully obey the Great Commission to make disciples? That's my first question. Are there any areas you think whether we should deconstruct the way we were doing it, or number 2, what are some practical steps we can do to more intentionally help that every person would have an authentic encounter through discipleship? Like, for instance, here in Africa, we've got many books, as other speakers have said, about discipleship. We've got many professors about discipleship. We don't lack anything. But as I'm standing here, I'm a pastor, but I never had a time where intentionally somebody take me by a hand and say, I want to teach you. Everything happened accidentally. Even if I didn't attend the cell groups, I will be encouraged by a scripture that I must not be like Gentiles who don't want to fellowship. So I want us to check that what are practical steps or steps that we can do to make it intentionally and relationally, more especially to us as Africans, because once you put anything in a book, sometimes it makes it difficult for us. If discipleship, it is more of teaching. That means with us, it may be more of a knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll go for the first one, and maybe you can tackle a bit of both. In terms of the African context, the question is, what are the challenges that's sort of holding back? What are the areas of need to sort of break the cycle? And I think the first one is a sort of this high and mighty platform, and there's only one that may stand on it. It's this, we're putting somebody on a pedestal, and we need to get rid of the pedestals. I think the pedestal is our biggest obstacle that we face before we want to take this journey. Because if we are preaching the message and we say every person is a minister, then it means there is no pedestal. Because we're all walking on level ground. And that, for me, is the key thing that we need to be able to say, listen, the expectation is that everyone must do what I do. And there needs to be, the gap between the pastor and his people must come down to where he feels like a player coach. He's part of the team, and they are part with him on this journey. And for me, that would be the starting point. And secondly to that would be to say, we need to teach the principle more deliberately about and demonstrate it. What Daniel did here, Kalenda did last night. I'll do the similar exercises as well. Say, okay, who's sick? Okay, people come forward. Then I say, okay, who of you have never prayed for a sick person? And people stick up their hands and say, okay, come forward and you're going to lay hands on people right now. And that means deliberate intention. And when people see that there's a freedom, I can do this, I may do this, because a lot of people feel I'm not allowed to. I'm not ordained. I haven't been to Bible school. I don't have a degree. I don't have a title. And we've got to move away from titles defining ministry. Ministry is not defined by the title you have. It's not defined by the degree you have. Ministry is defined by anything that you have and everything that you have. You need to share that. I think if you can go.
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I like the word you use, deconstruct. That's one of the things that we tried to do with this committee, this commission, is we've been trying to deconstruct our traditional or conventional views of discipleship that tend to be more rational behavioral, whereas discipleship is really relational. It is come alongside. It is messy. Relationships can be very messy. And that's oftentimes why we don't want to get involved, is because it's going to cost me something. For me to disciple you is going to cost me something. It's going to cause me to have to deal with my selfishness and cause me to get messy. In terms of not having someone to disciple you, I would just say break out of self-reliance by asking for help. Reaching out to another person to say, hey, can you help me in my area of needed growth? I'm needing some help in this. So I think that's the other thing we have to deal with is our own self-reliance to ask for help.
Pastor, you are late. Can you give that question in 3 words? Only 3. Quick. Is it done already? Not.
Oh, you got it. Okay. Sandy, sorry to come up late, but I feel this problem in this discipleship problem is taking us too long, but it's a very, very, very sensitive issue. Teachers, I'm sorry not to introduce even myself. I'm from Swaziland. I'm Pastor Lacy from Swaziland. I'm working with the Church of God of Prophecy, and we are working with interdenominational structures there in Swaziland. But I think our problem here is we don't grow as pastors ourselves. You find the very same pastors, the very same coach is coaching this team today. Tomorrow is starting another team there. The next day is starting another team there. Then there is no growth amongst or in the people we think they should be discipling the other people. Now our problem is in the calling. I don't know, how can you help us as African people or an African church to eradicate or stop this problem of running around or chasing donkeys around, while we have young people? The very same person who has been discipled today, tomorrow is over there, is a new convert. Tomorrow he's over there, he's a new convert. The next year he's there. Always, just that problem. We will never be established and become an African strong church.
Thank you.
Again, I think helping people learn their passions and even helping them develop their sense of purpose. What I think helps keep us from chasing donkeys, what's keep me from chasing donkeys is developing my own purpose statement. And I've done it just around my name. I've taken the letters of my name and created a purpose using the first letters of my name. So I've taken Lewis and, lovingly equipping wise, influential servants. That covers my first name as part of my purpose. My middle name is V-A-L-E, Vale, valuing all life experiences, yours as well as mine. I want to know when you fell in the ditch so I don't fall in the ditch. I want to know how you succeeded so I can learn from your best practices. And then the Alexander part of it is alleviating loneliness. I'm called to remove aloneness. Genesis 2:18, not going to be alone. So come alongside you. The EXA is expecting Christos, Christ, alongside me. The AN is, the ND is needing disciplines. I need disciplines in my life. Spiritual disciplines, emotional disciplines, physical disciplines. And then the ER is enriching relationships. So having a purpose and helping other people define their purpose in and around their calling, use the word calling, keeps us on track. Are my decisions matching my purpose today? That's one of the things that keeps me from chasing donkeys, is just having a strong sense of purpose and equipping others in their purpose.
I think in terms of pastors jumping from church to church to church and new believer here, new believer there, my wife and I have pastored 3 churches, but we don't see those churches as projects. We see them as family. And they will always be part of our lives. And so when we jump, we actually take people with me. When the last time I moved from one church to the next, the Lord said to me, Anton, you need to take your spiritual sons and daughters with you, not physically, but in relationship. It needs to be a continuation. And I think that's for me the starting point, is to say, listen, I'm going to walk a road with you, deliberate one, and it's going to be a continuation process. But as pastors, that also means we need to be continuously receiving. And there's a lack sometimes where pastors don't know, and church structures sometimes don't allow for that. But that doesn't stop you. That doesn't stop an Elisha from running after an Elijah and says, I'm going to leave my oxen, I'm going to leave my family, and I'm going to run after Elijah until I get what I need. And so as pastors, we also have that responsibility and hunger to keep on receiving from others as well. But I think I want us to, we're beyond our time, so the question actually leads us into the question I wanted to ask you. I've already given it to you, and we're going to take 5 minutes. It's open-ended, and we're going to close because we've got to be ready get this hall ready for the next evening session. But you can turn to somebody next to you, or somebody, preferably somebody you don't know, and just answer those key questions. Can your followers do what you do? Do they know what you know? Do they follow Jesus in the same way as you do? If not, why not?
Why not?
And how can you improve as a disciple maker?
How many minutes you gave?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So with that, I think we can say thank you to you all for coming, because we're going to close with that in your discussion. But don't rush it. You've got 5 minutes. Because I really want you to start thinking about this and help one another, and then pray with one another in closing.